FanDuel, friends, family, constituents, what's going on? We're welcoming you into the FanDuel Monday Night Preview show and Q&A that we're doing every week on Monday night to preview the Monday Night Football game. Ryan Williams here. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W, and I'm joined by my good friend, Jim Sonis. You can find him on Twitter at Jim Sonis. Jim, how are we doing today?
I am great, Ryan. Keeping track of this
Excellent.
NASCAR race while we are hanging out here. So trying to sweat some DFS lines, but also seeing if we can get a Bubba Wallace victory here. So I'm in a great mood right now. We get a fun Monday Night Football game. So, things are good. How about you?
Yeah, no, things are fun. I'm hoping to make back all my losses on Monday Night Football tonight. So, of course, we got to give the people the fantasy goodness. And while you're sweating the Bubba Wallace victory, it looks like, I don't want to jinx, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We'll get into this and get into some questions and answers, best bets that people can take from us for this game on Monday night. You're talking about the goodness of this game. We end on a good one. I believe the over under is coming in at 51.5. I'm not sure if that number has moved at all, but that's the last that I saw.
Yeah, still there.
Chargers favored by 3 in this one. The AFC West is stacked, Jim. This is definitely a must-win game for both of these teams. I mean, every division win is going to count for these teams, and we get an interesting one here because I feel like what the Raiders want to do to win, which Josh Jacobs, I believe, is still questionable in running the ball. That could be the way that you beat the Chargers, but they haven't been good at it because Josh Jacobs has been out. Even with Peyton Barber's great game last week, they've kind of struggled to get the run established. And we know what passing is like against the Chargers, as they're very stout against the wide receivers and tight ends. So what's your angle on this game? What leans are you taking from it? And what can we start off talking to the people about Monday?
Yeah, I think that for me, if I'm multi-entering for single game daily fantasy, I am playing things pretty close to straight down the middle because I see a lot of scenarios where the Raiders win this game. I know they're underdogs, but I think it's pretty realistic that happen. And like you said, the running game has really struggled for the Raiders, but we did see Peyton Barber get a lot of work last week. Got the numbers up over here in week number 3. Peyton Barber, 23 carries, 5 targets, 142 yards. He had 43% of the team's red zone chances. So I think that for me, when I'm having things pretty much straight down the middle, where I have a lot of lineups where I assume the Raiders win, a lot where I assume the Chargers win, that is going to lead to my having a decent amount of Peyton Barber. And honestly, Ryan, I want to pitch this to you. Sure. I think it's at least on the table to have some lineups for Peyton Barber as MVP if Josh Jacobs can't go. And that's still not a given. It sounds like he's potentially been cleared to play, but will he go? That's an open question too. So if there's no Jacobs, they've sounded pretty committed to Peyton Barber. I agree with you where it hasn't been a good running game, but do you think there's a path to some MVP consideration there on FanDuel?
Well, you definitely love the price tag you're getting at him for your MVP at 10.5. I think that there is a sure way that regardless of what happens, the Raiders still try to run the ball. And we know that they love running the ball even when they get in close 20 yards and before. So if you take out Josh Jacobs and the equity that he could be seeing, we haven't seen that role from Kenyon Drake yet come to fruition. So it's Peyton Barber's backfield, and I don't see any reason why you can't utilize him there. And nobody is going to be playing him there, Jim. And we kind of talked about that last week in the Cowboys game that I forget who they were playing against now, but we talked about just being different at the captain spot, playing Zeke in the captain spot, and Zeke goes out and scores 2 touchdowns. And everybody wanted to play the passing side of the offenses. So I think the narrative behind these two teams is, outside of Austin Eckler, it's pass, pass, pass. And even with Austin Eckler, we can talk about one of my best bets there, the receiving prop for him. You're still looking at passing equity going to be the first thing that people glean on when they look at this game. So I love getting Peyton Barber. I love getting Josh Jacobs. I mean, even at his price tag of $12,000 at MVP, we've seen this time and time again with Gruden. When the guy's banged up, he might not play his fair share of snaps between the 20s, or I'm sorry, outside of the 20s, but inside the 20s, he is going to get goal line work. And so if he can fall into 2 touchdowns, I really like that game. And then you're betting on it, the under to hit in this game, which most people will be thinking it'll go skyrocket over.
Yeah. I think that you're thinking about it correctly, where you're thinking about the way you want to attack this Chargers defense. And it really is that way. And we saw some teams that have been struggling with the ground game, kind of force it against them because they have to. And that's what the Chargers want you to do. They want to bait you into running the football. So like, we don't care. Like, go ahead, do it. We don't care. And the Chiefs ground game is not one they want to use. It's not a good one, but they leaned on it a decent amount in that game. So I think devoting a lot of your thought time to how you want to view the Raiders running backs is necessary and the correct way to play things for tonight with this single game slate.
Yes, I do love getting exposure to whoever is the starting back in that backfield. And if it's Peyton Barber, that just means that less people will be playing him. So I much rather would like to do that. But I don't know if I could go MVP spot like you, but I definitely do love that for big field tournaments, even in single entry too, because you're already going to separate yourself from a majority of that field in single entry. And that's one less thing you have to worry about. Guys, you're listening to the Monday Night Football preview show on FanDuel here. Get your questions and answers in. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're liking the videos. We appreciate that. One like goes a long way. So make sure you guys are helping us out there. And we'll help you out too by giving you guys some nice bets and picks that you guys can pick for your teams that we're leaning on as well too. Shout out to Mike Johnson, who's in the chat right now, asking if he should be playing both quarterbacks in his lineups tonight. And Mike, I think, we kind of talked about this. We've talked about this so far over the year, where on FanDuel, you only get to pick from 5 positions, and the touchdowns are so heavily favored that you kind of want to make sure that you're getting that equity. And so for a site like this, with Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, both of the guys have the keys to the offenses. I do like getting both of them into lineups and jamming them in. And because of where their prices come in at 55 or 15.5 for Justin Herbert and then 16,000 for Derek Carr, it does make it hard to get to all of those other guys. But if you're playing a Peyton Barber, maybe you play Hunter Renfrow and hope that, if they're playing from behind, he gets some equity, and you take a chance on maybe one of the main guys from LA, which is Eckler, Mike Williams, or Keenan Allen to pair with Justin Herbert. I do like finding ways to get them both into your lines. I think that's more so a cash game play that people talk about, but it does have some validity in tournaments when you're talking about how you pair them. How do you feel, Jim?
Yeah, I think that you're spot on in the way that it is we do need touchdowns. So if you think the touchdowns break that way, where we see the quarterbacks control them, that's going to, it's going to require you to be there. I think that the question that I have is like, do we think this game is high scoring? Because if it's high scoring, that implies a lot of touchdowns. That implies a lot of yardage. That implies quarterbacks. If you think this game goes under, then you've got more leeway to avoid the quarterback. So kind of deciding how you think the game overall plays out. If you think that Chargers defense keeps things in front of them, keeps it a bit slower pace, that may lend itself towards not having both quarterbacks in there. Or if you think that one team dominates, I think those are the two routes where you don't get both quarterbacks in. But if you think this game plays to the total of 51.5, which, like you said, is a pretty high total, that does lend itself towards both quarterbacks. And look at here. I mean, like $9,500 left for the final 3 spots. If you put those 2 guys in there, that's not bad. You can make that work for sure. And like you said, you're talking about Hunter Renfrow, got Peyton Barber down there in this range. Good. Oopsies. Clicked on Brian Edwards there. You've got some guys. Jared Cook has a good role. Revenge game, Ryan, for Jared Cook.
Yes.
You've got guys down here we can feel okay about, and that does make it work. I think for me, if I'm doing like a single entry tournament, I'm probably sticking to just one, because I feel like that's going to be the less common way to play things. So I think if I have one entry, I'm probably going with just one. But if you're trying to maximize your median expectation and trying to, like you said, play a cashier type format, that's where I want to go to.
And if you're only playing one, Jim, who would that be? Are you you said you kind of like the Raiders in this game. So are you leaning Carr, and are you leaning Herbert? And what is that story that you're telling yourselves? Is Derek Carr going to have to pass from being behind, and then he wins the game late, and that's why you like him? Or are you playing Herbert and they just tell me how you're feeling about that, because I'm interested to hear your opinion.
I kind of think my favorite build, and this is potentially stupid, but what ideas aren't potentially stupid? I kind of like a Herbert, Eckler, Peyton Barber build if we get that ability to use Peyton Barber as the lead back for tonight, because that assumes that the Raiders scoring some touchdown on the ground. That lowers the appeal in both Derek Carr and the passing game for the Raiders, but it also does not rule out the fact that the Chargers passing or, the Chargers offense can move the football. So I think maybe, in a situation, maybe you put Barber at MVP and kind of see what happens. But I think to me, the build of Herbert, Eckler, Barber is very attractive. What about for you? Where are you leaning between the two quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I had a build earlier which actually had Herbert at MVP, but had Peyton Barber in as a placeholder because I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out what to do with Jacobs. And just with that being the reason of the Raiders are frustrating in every slate, and especially
Yeah.
on a single game slate, they're going to be frustrating because you kind of know where the ball is going to go. But if it doesn't go that way, they're fine with going other options. We see Alec Ingold be involved. We know that Ruggs is going to be involved to a certain extent. Edwards is going to be involved. He's the number one guy in the offense. But where can you realistically say that those points are going to go in any type of game script? We
Right.
don't know. And I'd much rather just take a bet on saying, okay, let me get Herbert. I like him to pass in this game, regardless of who it's to. Let me pair him with 1, 2, maybe 3 guys and just have a running back there for the Raiders, because I know that when they get into the red zone or green zone, however you want to look at it, close to the goal line, they're looking to get the running backs involved. So if I can just get all the touchdown equity or little touchdown equity that there could be from the Raiders side, I'm happy with that and just taking Herbert, because I know for sure that one of his pass catchers, if not the running back, is going to be involved with him.
Right. And I think that to your point there, let's say the Raiders score 35 points. Those 35 points could be pretty evenly distributed because of what you're talking about, where we don't really know who's going to be the primary focus. I had their target shares pulled up here, and after Darren Waller, things are super spread out. Renfrow has a decent role and like a pretty steady role, and he's been good in that role as well. So it's not like it's hollow volume. He's actually producing, which does make him in play here. But beyond that, Henry Ruggs has 15% target share. Edwards is at 10%. Kenyon Drake is at 13%. As far as the deep targets go, it's a lot towards Waller, and then it is pretty split though. So even if the Raiders score 35 points, not a guarantee that necessarily leads to like a big day for many of the individuals. So
Right.
I think that the difference is we know where the ball is going on the Chargers. It's going to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And these two dudes have like very similar target distributions right now. They're not going deep very often, which is kind of frustrating. And they're kind of being rush heavy on first down, which is also weird and annoying. But like, you know where the ball is going when it matters. Keenan Allen with 35% of the red zone targets, Mike Williams at 31%. Like, that concentrated volume matters a lot. So I think I'd be on your side as well, where even in the lineups where I assume that the Raiders are competitive, I'm okay maybe being like let's say it's a Raiders win lineup. I'm okay going like a Peyton Barber, Derek Carr, and then 3 Chargers, even the lineup where I assume the Raiders win because of how spread out their volume can be.
Yeah, and that really is what it comes down to for me. And I mean, even then, you're going to have to make stands on who you put into your lineups. I see Abby O'Dunn here, who's coming in on the chat asking about Allen or Williams. Like, you have to pretty much make a decision between those two guys. Otherwise, the lineup's just not going to feel comfortable to you. You're going to miss out on somebody, whether that's a running back or anybody, I guess, outside of Hunter Renfrow from Las Vegas. And then really just hoping that they get all the equity. But I think it's one or the other. And I'm kind of taking a lean on Keenan Allen myself, Jim, just because the narrative behind him is just it's not great right now. Mike Williams is the alpha. We've seen kind of Joe Lombardi's preseason talk come to fruition of this is Michael Thomas. my Mike Thomas in the offense, and Mike Williams has been great. And listen, Jim, we got a birthday narrative here for Mike Williams, I believe.
Oh no,
today is his birthday.
Wow.
So it doesn't make me feel great in saying this, but I just think that when we're talking about tournaments, especially in single entry, when I know where people are gleaning, where they're going to take more chances on some of the known guys, let me get the Keenan Allen, who, like you said, his numbers are still there. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. And what better way to come to fruition against this Raiders team that he has had success against in the past before?
Yeah, I think that I'd agree. I'd go with Keenan too, partly because salary, but also because, like you said, the narrative is pretty different from reality. When I was looking at their target shares initially, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. Like Mike Williams has similar target numbers to Keenan Allen, but now given the love Mike Williams has gotten, it's like, oh no, let me remind you that Keenan Allen still has similar shares to Mike Williams. And I feel like we've forgotten that Keenan Allen is still really good. 27% of the overall targets. He is at 21% of the deep targets. So he's behind Mike Williams there, but 35% in the red zone again. Like, I think that we've kind of forgotten how good Keenan Allen is. So to me, I think that if you're picking one, like let's go Herbert MVP, let's plug in Eckler for funsies, and let's put Keenan in there. That's not bad. 92.50 left. You're in the Hunter Renfrow range there for like your bring back. So I think that lineup is pretty easy to build. Maybe that does mean that Allen will be more popular because of the salary, but I think that I'm on board with you where I think, I think that the discussion around those two guys favors Williams to an extent where I think he will be pretty popular here.
Yes, and I do think in Mike Johnson in the chat talking about the number one receiver has had success against the Raiders. And, regardless of who you think that is, I think you should be trying to get one of these two guys into your lineups. If you can talk your way into a scenario where points are going to be scored, because I think one of those guys is going to put up a score that you would want to have. Let's talk about the Raiders side a little bit as we have Aaron Rasmus in the chat. Aaron, shout out for you being here. You've been here with us the past couple of weeks. Always love seeing your name come up. And just to clarify, Aaron, so this is actually the week 4 Monday night preview. So the last game of week 4. We're not doing week 5 just yet, but I appreciate you getting our backs on making sure that the title's correct.
We're excited.
Sometimes we do misspell it, and that's what Slack is for us to talk to each other. So he's asking about Waller. And what comes down to me with Waller, and every time it's a single game slate with the Raiders, I always get scared of fading him. But I'm just looking at the secondary for the Chargers, specifically with Derwin James being back, and they have just been so stout and elite. And I know that the Raiders want to feed this guy the ball. I mean, 7+ targets is pretty much his MO. That's what he's going to get. That's what he's going to provide. And we do love that. But on a single game slate where we kind of have to get things right, I'm willing to take that chance in saying that Waller just doesn't get there. But I do like what he's saying, where if you are playing Waller, just play him in the captain spot, because the chances of him just blowing up and exploding, you want to get all those points. And why not get it at MVP, the MVP spot?
Yeah, the range of outcomes is wide, and I think that I agree with that fully, because he could have a game like that Ravens game where he gets 19 targets, but maybe he's even more productive on those targets. So like we saw last year in that Jets game, not that the Jets defense is anyway similar to the Chargers, but like he can have games where he drops a 40 burger. So putting him at MVP, I think makes a lot of sense. But then the idea of not having him in there at all is also valid, because like look at those last 2 games. He's had 65 and 54 yards at $13,000. That's not going to burn you for not having it on your roster. So I think that I'd agree with you where, like, if we're talking about percentage of lineups where you have him and you have him at MVP, he might have the highest number. Like it's kind of MVP or bust. Like I will still have some at the traditional flex spot, but I think the ratio of MVP to non-MVP lineups would be greater for him than anyone else. That might not have made sense, but it did in my head at least.
no, it did. And that's what makes this tough, is because you kind of have a feeling of where one team is going to go, but you can't play everybody from that team, and you have no idea what's going to happen with the other team. And so that's what always makes it fun for the single game slates. Yes. So that's what makes me just not inclined to take that many Raiders, Jim, outside of the running back. It's like, I just don't want to have to guess. But what's fun about not having to guess is we can go over to the FanDuel Sportsbook and we could just take shots on things that we think might happen. So
let's do it.
One of the guys, which isn't on the Raiders side, it's going to be going back to the LA side of things. And that's a Cook anytime touchdown at 250. We had talked about before a couple of weeks where he was playing in that game, I believe against Dallas, had the touchdown called back. In the red zone or green zone, whatever you want to refer to it as, Mike Williams and Allen are seeing a majority of the share of targets there. He's got one inside that area. So, I mean, if it's going to happen, and again, revenge game narrative, so we love to get any type of lanes there, but I do like getting some Cook exposure, and he's only 7,500 when we're talking about the single game slate, so I am interested to kind of play him on this slate as well too.
Yeah, I think the Keenan Allen number is awesome. Plus 130 to me is
Yes.
a really good number on him. And like Mike Williams is plus 125. So I could just go with the guy who's been more productive so far this year. But as mentioned, like Allen's getting a lot of work in the red zone. I think the Jared Cook one is pretty good too, not just because of the revenge narrative, but like I agree with what you were saying. And this Chargers offense, I think, is due for some positive regression in the red zone in general because they've had so many like falters there throughout the year so far. And I don't expect that to continue just because you look at the just think of the dudes on this team. You got Keenan Allen, who's like 6'9". You got Jared Cook, who's like 7'3". Mike
Yes.
Williams, who's 8 feet tall. Like that personnel should
Well,
destroy worlds in the red zone.
they're like
So
all former basketball players,
yeah,
right?
yeah. They
Like,
just they wanted to clone. They just basically wanted to keep the Antonio Gates thing going. They're like, yeah, like he's
sure.
gone, but like let's just keep it rolling. Let's get more basketball players.
Right.
So I think that is that I think Keenan Allen and Jared Cook are the two I like most for anytime touchdown scores. What do you think about Jared Cook for the
Love it.
single game slate at 75? I think that he's probably one of the better lower salary guys here.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's absolutely in play. I mean, I would love him. I probably build. I'm a single entry guy myself, so I
Yeah,
usually only build one, if not two lineups on
yeah.
the short game slate. But if I was building multiple lineups on the single game slate, like I'd probably have 75% of him.
Oh yeah,
Three of every four teams that I would build, it would probably put him in because he's 7,500. He allows you to do so much at the top end of the spectrum, and it just feels like a misprice, so to speak, when you're talking about who he's kind of around
yeah.
for what he can pay off. I mean, Donald Parham is not a thing. We don't have to worry about that. Kenyon Drake is 8K, Jalen Guyton 7K, Foster Moreau 7K. Like he doesn't belong in the range of these guys.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. And like looking at the guys who are beneath him, the drop off is pretty significant. Like Jalen Guyton doesn't get a lot of volume. Foster Moreau, all he does is score touchdowns. Like, that could
Right.
work. But like, I think that Cook, you have some more steady, dependable production. Justin Jackson, as much as I adore him, not getting a lot of work. Larry Roundtree, probably above Justin Jackson right now as well. So I think that for me, like I can't set the floor at Jared Cook, but of the guys I actively want to use, he is the lowest salary guy.
Yes, and that's kind of the lean for me. I mean, if I'm
Mhm.
going anywhere outside, and maybe I could talk myself into Brian Edwards, but I don't love that play. So anybody lower than Hunter Renfrow at 9.5, it's just Jared Cook, and that's log out for me. Let's go back to the Raider side of things. Just as we touch on these wide receivers, and Waller, by all intents and purposes, is the wide receiver one on this team. But if we're not talking about him, we're looking at Henry Ruggs, we're looking at Brian Edwards, we're looking at Hunter Renfrow. And are you excited to play any of these guys, take any of their props? Is anything sticking out for you on this team? I guess for me, it's like Henry Ruggs could take one deep.
Yeah.
So I kind of I think his yards prop is very low, maybe like in the 30 range, 39, something like that. I kind of
46
like
and a
going
half. It might have gone up.
46. Okay,
Yeah.
so it might gone up. I like that for him because he's pretty explosive. So I could see him, getting that on one or two catches, but that's about it for me on the
Yeah.
side, except for Hunter Renfrow in the lineup.
Yeah. Hunter Renfrow, 49 and a half receiving yardage prop. Let's see what he's done. I think he's surpassed that in each game so far.
Okay.
70, 57, 77. Like that's good production, but he's doing it on like not the best volume, and he's not getting like a lot of deep targets. It's not the situation where you have with like Ruggs where you can pay it off like immediately. So I think that I
Right.
know that number might feel a bit low. I am okay passing up on it though. Looking at Ruggs, 46 and a half. I believe that two of his 3 or 4 highest career yardage marks have come through the first 3 games this year. He's been getting some
Wow.
volume, like 7 targets each of the past 2 games. So when I look at him, his yardage prop is lower than Renfro's. I think I might prefer Ruggs as well. I don't prefer it enough to bet it. Like, I don't think I'm going to bet Henry Ruggs, but I think if I were to pick one on the Raiders, Ruggs would be the guy I'd turn to for the reasons you mentioned.
Yes, I think that I can sleep easily at night knowing that I took a shot on the most dynamic player in this
Yeah.
offense, not named Darren Waller. So if I'm thinking that points are going to be scored and they have to come from the Raiders in bunches, and I do like that he's getting 7 targets in the past 2 games that he's played in.
Sure.
So they actually are trying to get him the ball and get him the ball in space. So I do love that. Shout out to Liquid Demons, who's in the YouTube chat. Darren Waller in primetime equals money. That might be true. And if he does equal money, Liquid Demons, put him in your MVP spot and take all the money home today, because I think in any Raider who's in the MVP spot is probably going to be under, I'm going to say under 17% at the MVP spot for a
outside
Raider.
of Carr,
I think all the favorite. Yes, outside of Carr. Yes.
Yeah.
Even Carr.
I mean, honestly, Carr might be around 17%.
Yeah,
so I think
it's
that's
hard
probably
to trust.
right.
Yeah, it's hard to trust. So yeah, I think you're already getting a leg up on the field just by doing that in some of these tournament lines. Herbert as well, Jim, and why he's coming in for me as my favorite MVP, I think, on this slate is just because he's been so dynamic and he's been good in this matchup. 300 plus yards in the games that he played against them last year. And it's kind of hard to go back in 2020 on both of these games because Carr got hurt, I believe, in a game with him. I think Allen might have gotten hurt or something happened with him as well, too, in a game that they played in. So not always actionable data that we can take there. But Herbert to start the season has just looked so explosive. And we know that if the run game's not going for them, they have no issue with letting him just drop back and make things happen.
I think I've heard a lot of talk because I listen to a lot of like nerdy football podcasts has been about how frustrating the Chargers offense has been on first and second down. And that's concerning. I think that the question is, do we have faith in Joe Lombardi adjusting and trying to get them more advantageous third down situations where Justin Herbert doesn't have to like work magic to dig them out of a hole? That could happen. Like Joe Lombardi was with the Saints for a very long time. They're a team that understands first and second down. So like, I think that if we do see that regression, like, Herbert's numbers have been good so far. They could be great if they decide to be a bit more aggressive in early downs. So I'm okay banking on that too and being high on Herbert. I think that the only like reservation I have is that I'd guess he's probably going to be the most popular MVP. So like if I'm going with a lineup where I think, it's going to be pretty tight game, I might go Eckler at MVP just because I love the usage he has gotten so far this year. Eckler, 57, 115, 107 yards. He got good red zone work in week 1, decent red zone work in week 3. But like, I think that the lack of touchdowns is going to keep him from being all that popular. Bubba Wallace just won the NASCAR race.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness. Amazing.
Anyway, Bubba.
I got to pull out got the Bubba Wallace Funko Pop on the screen.
There we go. Look at that.
Oh my goodness. That's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Jim's such a loyalist. That's what's great. That's what's great about Jim. Is
just Chad Pennington and Bubba Wallace. What else could you possibly want? Let's go, Bubba. There we go.
Oh my goodness.
But I think Eckler is really attracted to me. I think that I agree with you where like eventually we're going to see this Chargers offense open it up more, and that'll be good for Herbert. But like Eckler, the upside there is really good.
Yes. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, compared to what the narrative street was around him circling around week 1, where he saw no targets. And then now we're looking at him. And I do like getting on some receiving action for Eckler in this game. I think his receiving prop is at 39.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. He's hit that in both games since week 1. 50 and over, I believe, in both those games. So even if you want to do an alternate line there for plus money, I would say go ahead and take a chance on that. This is just going to be a fun one. I mean, again, the over under 51.5. I think that there are going to be points scored in this one, and just figuring out where they come from and in a meaningful way will just pay off dividends. Is there anything else that you're leaning on in this game, Jim, before we kind of wrap it up for the people?
No, I think that the things that I want to like, if we were like recapping what we talked about as like firm takeaways, I would say Jared Cook is being a lower salary guy, Hunter Renfrow under salaried on FanDuel for today. And then the idea of putting, at least for me, running backs at MVP, I think that is going to be a way I want to play things for tonight.
Yes, and definitely you want to monitor the news circling around Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to try and give it a go pre-game, and we'll see what the reports are kind of circling around him. But just monitor that and know that if he's in play, that kind of makes things a little bit dicey in that backfield. So you might want to go another direction. But if he isn't in play, then I think you can certainly lean on a guy like Peyton Barber in your single game entries, or maybe take a shot on Kenyon Drake, who's 8K. If you think that they're playing from behind and that we do see a kind of pass catching role open up for somebody in this backfield, then go ahead and take a shot there. Guys, Monday Night Football preview and Q&A show that you guys are watching here with Ryan Williams and Jim Sonis. You guys join us every Monday at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be happy to answer all of your questions. Real quickly, just on the FanDuel Sportsbook, guys, always make sure you're looking at the boosts there. The boosts are kind of fun to kind of get some action on. I believe Derek Carr to have one or more passing touchdowns in either half, plus 200, and Herbert to have 2+ passing touchdowns and for the Chargers to win outright is plus 160. So always a fun way to get some action there on the FanDuel Sportsbook. We're trying to offer you guys all types of ways to win. So check those out. And before you do, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys are liking the videos. We appreciate that. A plethora of love to all you guys who are joining the FanDuel channel. Signing off for Jim Sonis. At Jim Sonis is where you can find him on Twitter. I'm Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Alexander _W. And we'll catch you guys next Monday. Until then, get that money. Peace.